Hello, everyone. Welcome to to the ban list party, as Mighty suggested in Soon Chat. We're making a tier list of the even more occupations that have been added to BGA. Hope you're all doing well out there. It's going to be a longer stream today, on the order of 3 hours, plus or minus a bit. Probably not minus. And for that reason, I'm going to be trying to preserve my voice, just like last time. Not going to talk too loud, not going to get too excited. Try to make sure I don't need to slam cough drops after streaming today. So yes, hello to Mighty, hello also to JPP, hello everyone else lurking out there. And hello to everyone watching on YouTube. So, as with last time, we have the base tier list of ABCDE. We might as well just add some stuff we know we'll need. We can flavor it up later. Well, that's not how that works. Add row below. There we go. We're ready. Should I zoom this in a little more? Yeah, it's probably fine. Oh, we can zoom up to here. Yeah, that'll be... We'll go this. It's big. Alright, are we ready? It's a lot of stuff here. 3, 6, 9, 12, 15, 18, 21, 22 times 500, or 131. 131 cards in 180 minutes. Can I do it? Let's find out. We are starting with the Pickler. Oh, and I guess the caveat as with last time, I'm going to be rating these in the current arena format on BGA. Draft 10, all the cards, no additional spaces. Hopefully, if you're watching this on YouTube in a few months, the arena format will not be this anymore. So, slight downside to the tier lists matters a little less. But upside is that we don't have to play that stupid format in arena. Okay, Pickler. I like the 4 wood cards more in this arena format. The bonus on Pickler is pretty finicky. Depending on the draft, it can be 1 with 4 or 5, or the winner for Pickler might be like as high as 8 or 9. So it can really be a rat race if you're chasing the most veggies. So I like to think of Pickler as mostly a 4 wood card, and kind of like Dedery Reeve, you're happy to throw everyone onto a weird game. So it's like kind of mid as far as 4 wood cards go, but it also is less likely to penalize you, because if someone's winning Pickler, they're probably losing a point or 2 elsewhere. I'm gonna say it's B tier. Draft 12, no schmug, never in my life. Draft 20 or Riot. Okay, Sadler is not particularly good in Play Agricola days. I think it's probably better in this format because the food cost is not super prohibitive, and there's usually a few majors that you can grab mid and late game after you've aggressively grown. And of course there are games where you can win the race to majors and then Sadler becomes really good. Like Tree Guard games, for example. I think this is... I'm going to put it above Pickler, which is maybe a little crazy. But I think Sadler is certainly better than it was in Play Agricola. Culinary artist. You want it to work. and then maybe you convert one thing once. Stable Sergeant is really good. Helps you get breeding pairs in the late game, helps you get your animals that you're missing in the late game if you're doing other game plans. So I think Stable Sergeant is really, really quite good. The stats during playtesting on Play Agricola also said it was quite frickin' good. I think this is a clear A tier occupation. Margrave. It's a little confusing to read. You have to be in a stone house, and then you get food when other people renovate. And then, during scoring, this is the more important part of the card, you get points for people not in stone. Yo, Victory Point Gaming, what's up? Thanks so much for the raid. How was your stream? And here's a shout out. Dragon Eclipse. I have to admit I don't know what Dragon Eclipse is. But yeah, if you're interested in watching a very consistent streamer play tons of Arc Nova and Wingspan, etc., definitely give Victory Point Gaming a follow. Yeah, we are tier listing, so this is going to be some good strategy content for those less familiar with the newest card set on BGA. Yeah, hope your stream went well, and thanks again for the raid. Welcome all raiders. And I am going to be, for those of you who just joined, I'm trying to run through these cards kind of fast. There's 131 of them, and I want to do it in 3 hours, so can't really afford to get too extended talking about them. Card game that's an upcoming board game. Played it on Steam. Oh, fun. Fun, fun, fun. Alright, so Margrave I don't think is that good. It's kind of hard to get to the stone house, but it can, like, if you have nothing else to pick, you can usually play this endgame for a point or two. I think this is a very clear D tier. Alright, Overachiever. If you watched the videos I did with Gray, you know that me and Gray both really like Overachiever. And I think it is just an A tier card, especially because in this arena format, growing to 5 usually happens by the end of the game for 3 or 4 players out of 4. Fun times. Can I find the cards by pictures? It looks a lot like Master Renovator. That's Entrepreneur. There's Overachiever. Probably better than Stable Sergeant. Alright, Lieutenant General. I have seen some disrespect for this card in some arena games so far this season. But it's a bit of food in the mid-game, and then in round 14, it's like 1 to 3 grain, maybe 4 if you're lucky, and someone runs like Turn Rest Plow. And then you can try to sneak in a sow for that grain. I really like Lieutenant General. I think it's a solid B tier occupation. Where is it? It is a B card. There. I probably am going to end up moving Pickler up a bit. Animal Husbandry Worker, also featured in the videos with me and Gray. 4 wood occupation with a bit of a different flavor. You actually can't get anything from it if you play it in the last 3 rounds, so you do need to watch out for that. The bonus condition means everyone is enticed to go for 5 small pastures, so it really is like immediate fence action with 4 wood is the main benefit, and that is a really good benefit sometimes. Clear A tier occupation for me. Resource Analyzer. There are going to be 1 or 2 blank cards in this tier list. And, you know, I think I've thought about this card before, like, under what conditions I want to play it. And there's no answer. Worse than Catcher? I mean, it's pretty equal to Catcher. Alright, next up is Animal Tamer's Apprentice, and this is a card that if you've been watching me play games on Twitch during drafts recently, I've been dreaming of having Animal Tamer's Apprentice a couple times. I've only got to play it once so far this arena season, but it was really good. And I wasn't even, like, keeping the animals to breed. I was literally just eating my free animals every round, and it was amazing. It felt amazing. So, I think Animal Tamer's Apprentice, it wasn't super strong on Play Agricola. It had its, like, specific uses. I think in this arena format, there's a lot of times where you're just sitting there with an empty room for a while. So, why not get extra compensation for doing that? Sivir and others have been starting to call this Animal Child list, but note that it's better than that. You can, like, have a 6-room house, 5 people, and be getting a pig or a cow every round in the late game. Very late game. Where? Where are you? There you are. So yeah, I think it's B tier. I think all of these are like mid and low B so far. Stone Custodian. So it's some mid-game food. Mid-game and late-game food. It's probably a little underrated. I mean, it's probably on the same level as Bohemian. So barely playable if you want a little river of food in your mid and late game. High D tier probably. Mid D tier. Alright, Hewer is super duper good. Also featured in the videos with me and Gray. If you didn't know that this tier list was a plug for watching those videos, if you haven't, now you know. I think we put Hewer above Animal Husbandry, and I think that's probably correct. The amount of stone and food you get is like at minimum 3 each. And admittedly, it's not the best occupation when it's only 3 and 3. But there are also games where it's like 6 or 7. So, and it's those games that really make it crazy. Alright, Breeder Buyer. You have to build a room and at least one stable on the same turn. And usually you're doing that in wood, sometimes you're doing that in clay. I don't remember the last time... Well, no, I guess some endgames you build a stone room and multiple stables. Or a clay room and multiple stables. But in those games I usually have pastures already and don't need an extra animal. So I don't think I'm ever proccing this twice in a game just by itself or with any combos really. You know what I guess this works with is Stable Cleaner. That's it. High F tier. It has like one combo. Beer Tent Operator. So if you break this down, you get to do a joinery conversion, and you get to turn a grain into a point. And there's the 2 things at once bonus. Because a card that does 2 things is better than 2 cards that do 1 thing. So the issue is, like, how often do you want the joinery conversion? Not too often. How often do you want grain to point? Maybe a bit in the late game. There's also just, like, a big negative effect in that the 2 things at once, you could argue, is actually a negative overall here, because wood and grain are both things you keep around generally and multiply or turn into better stuff. Maybe it has some good use cases. I don't think I've ever played it, and I don't think I've ever regretted not taking it. So I can't put it in F tier, but it's definitely D for me. Did Uwe officially change Hewer to a 4? Oh no. No. It's a 3. And there's no wording issues, I don't think. Are you saying it's overpowered in 3? Pig Stalker. Had to be reworded to match the BGA board, but should be roughly the same value. And that value is not much. You have to be next to an animal space before you take the animal space. Then you take the animal space, and you get a free pig. I don't... Yes, we're back. Okay. Twitch thinks I'm back, so I guess I'm back. And I already put things in the chat room. Okay. Well, I guess I'll give it a couple minutes while everything recovers from whatever disaster, not actual disaster, happened. Pig Stalker I put into F already. Do I think it's a true F? Yes, barely. Pig Stalker, F tier. Next we have Old Miser. Hi. Hello. Econ Sean, thank you for the raid. Welcome, raiders. Shout out Econ Sean. That is Econ Sean's, who apparently doesn't exist. Speaking of alternate Econ Sean's, I noticed a BGA user yesterday in the lobby for a game I wasn't planning to play, but I noticed a person named Yukon Sean, S-H-A-W-N. So I was like, hey, that's a funny Canadian alter ego for Econ Sean. But yeah, welcome. How are your games, I presume? Very cool that you were streaming Agricola today. And yeah, I had to do some work like pretty soon after you started. There's also Econ Fan. Yeah, that's a friend of chat. You won both. Awesome. That's cool. Really glad you won that first one because your hand was funny. I assume you got the nutrition out at some point for like 3 to 5 points. But yeah, we are tier listing. We're just getting started here. There's 131 total. I was aiming to do this all in 3 hours, but it's probably going to be 3.5 after that power went out at my place delay. 6. Very cool. 6 is great. So yeah, for everyone just joining, welcome. So far in A tier, we have Hewer, Animal Husbandry Worker, Overachiever, and Stable Sergeant. Oh my god, I thought zooming in would be easy. B tier, Animal Tamer's Apprentice, Lieutenant General, Saddler, and Pickler. D tier, Stone Custodian, Beer Tent Operator, and Margrave. F tier, Pig Stalker, Breeder Buyer, Culinary Artist, and Resource Analyzer. Alright. Old Miser. Old Miser says you get 2 points per family member instead of 3, but the amount of food it saves in the game can be like mid-20s on a big house. And that is a really good deal for 5 points, especially the timing of your food. Needing 2 food in the first harvest, 2 or 3 in the second harvest, just makes the game flow so much easier. And in general, I think Old Miser is an awesome card for big houses. You can easily make up the 5 points by doing things besides feeding when you'd otherwise be feeding. I think it is maybe an A-, B+ in this meta. I don't think I would call it worse than B+. And of course, as with last time, there's the fun game of can Lumin find the card? Can Lumin find the card? 6th row. Thank you. Oh. That was very helpful. A feels a little aggressive, but I'll put it top of B. Pet Lover stands cutting my power to protest it not getting ranked today. True, Pet Lover is not an even more. Old Miser still good for 3-room strats? Usually on 3-room strats, you get your food engine up faster, so I think it saves less actions relatively. It's not unplayable, but also if you're playing 3 rooms in this meta, I would not be playing Old Miser most of the time. But if my early food gets screwed somehow, I might. Alright, Huntsman, I've never believed in. Turning grains into the most available animal, and I say that in terms of a lot of cards add pigs to the game, more so than the other types, at least as far as I think about things. So turning an important thing into a common thing, usually not a great trade, so why waste a turn playing an Ock to do this? I'm going to come in hot and put this in F tier. Illusionist. It is a fun idea to throw away cards from your hand that you don't plan on playing and then get something from it. But this is probably the weakest edition of this kind of card. Original Agricola has the Village School, the Village Fool, and if you play G6, the Village Head. I think Illusionist is pretty bad comparatively to the School, the Fool, and the Head. Sorry to those of you who don't know what I'm talking about, but just bear with me. When you have more flexibility on when you discard cards, discarding your cards becomes better, but here you have to go to an accumulation space and discard a card for specifically one extra of that type. And that is not flexible, and that makes this card difficult to get a ton of value from. And we're talking about draft 10. So I think this is D tier. It has some uses, but mostly in bad drafts. Next up, Elder Baker. It is a personal action space to get 3 grain, and also has this side benefit of minor improvementing the stone oven. It's definitely good to have a private 3 grain space if you're like running Big House. And then a lot of early game plans, a 3 grain space is pretty darn good to use once or twice in the first 2 stages. I also have not seen this get played and used very much in the arena season, making me think I might overrate it a little. So I'm gonna put this like in B tier, even though I want to say it's better. The small sample size evidence that I currently have doesn't suggest that it's better. Yeah, probably like behind Animal Tamer's Apprentice for now. Alright, we have our first ban tier. First of too many. This is like a bunch of free points, and some games you can make it worth 20. I don't need to say more. Open Air Farmer I like a lot, but a little less in Draft 10. The stables being taken away can be annoying for a lot of side quests that you might have, like any stable combo, and you don't want this card at all. But getting a 2x1 pasture for 2 wood is pretty good. Basically, like, great early capacity to steal sheep or hold your visionary or whatever garbage you're planning to do more reasonably, like collector. And often you won't miss the 3 stables too much. In Draft 10, I think you do a little more. So I'm going to put this a little lower than I would for other draft counts. Is it even C tier? I need to start putting some stuff into C tier. But I'll adjust that later. Actually, I can just start now. Kelp Gatherer, on Play Agricola, I loved playing this card. It is a surprisingly good source of early veggies, in my opinion. And I know that I love to overrate the card, so I will try to adapt to that and put it in C tier, even though my heart wants to say it's a B tier card. Hello, Alex. Delivery Nurse is hard to get to early on, but there are enough games where you can get a stage 4 or 5 growth with it, and in those games on like a 3-room game, it's pretty nice. You don't get the growth immediately, you still have to go to grow, and that is kind of annoying even in like round 11 in this meta. So I think I'm putting this in C tier also. Alright, Market Master, this is the one that Schmog was trying to reference earlier. It is a really good way to play extra occupations early. In Original Edition on Play Agricola, there are more traveling players ox that combo with Market Master, and if you can find like a Conjurer, then Market Master gets really cool. But even something like Portmonger helps it out significantly, actually. Terrible name change, agreed. Used to be called Circus Manager, which, like, is a totally fine name for something that works on traveling players. I think this is A tier. Especially, well, I guess I shouldn't consider later on when things get banned. When more things get banned. But, like, Craft Teacher and Freshman are definitely better ways to play Ox. So I guess, well, no, Market Master's still great. I think in Draft 10 you can find combos for it. I'm going to put it at the bottom of A tier. I don't try to get into Uwe's head anymore, Gray. Veggie Vendor. This is actually a good source of veggies and has some good combos, but even if you don't want to combo it, it gives you like 2 veggies for building fireplace and then hearth, in some sense. So it is good easy food and good access to veggies for all your veggie needs. I think there are like less veggie needs in this set, but there's still enough to where Veggie Vendor can have some really good uses. That said, it also doesn't like have a huge ceiling, so I think this is another instance of Heart wants to put it in B, but I probably overrated a bit and should put it in C. Alright, real question, what's Stable Hand doing? Why is Stable Hand in here? We don't have 131 cards to rank. We have 130. Is this better than Art Teacher, Market Master? Oh, way better than Art Teacher. In my opinion. I guess maybe not way better, but definitely better. Alright, Clay Pit Owner. If you've been watching my streams, you know that people have been calling in with great Clay Pit Owner results, and I tried it once, and I didn't get great results. But it's pretty solid overall. There are a lot of miners that cost clay relative to original when it was called Hill Bandit. And in original it was pretty good. It makes sense that it's better in this format. So I think it's a B tier. Solid B tier though. Maybe better than Elder Baker. What's scaring the Clay Pit Owner? I think he's just happy obsessive about all the loamy soil that he gets exposed to. But yeah, the art can be pretty funny. Alright, Game Provider is a card I've warmed up on recently. It took me seeing, like, part of the power of craft brewery being discarding a grain from fields to notice that this can actually be a double benefit in some sense. If you have grain sown at the wrong times, you can get stuff off to re-sow your grain and get pigs simultaneously. So I do think Game Provider is pretty neat. I don't think it's too frequently usable, but I think it definitely has rare situations of being pretty good. Yes, Trey, it is. I may have made a Nightbot command for it, but it's definitely linked in the YouTube video. I'm going to put this high D tier. I don't think it's low C. Forest Campaigner maybe gives you like 3 food during the game. Maybe reliably. Sorry, one sec. No, I can wait to respond to that. Yeah, Forest Campaigner, I don't know when you would actually get a usable amount of food from it. Alright, Veggie Lover thankfully does have upgraded graphics now. This screenshot was taken before the graphics update. Now the grain and veg are stacked on each other. I want this card to be better than it is, but in this meta I've had a hard time seeing a good, clear way to make Veggie Lover really good. I should probably draft it a little more. It's also possible that I haven't had it in drafts very often. But it is a really solid way to squeeze a couple extra points or more out of your crops. So I'll put it in B tier. Should be congratulated for being a very minor tree guard spike. It's before you place a person. If it was, well, I guess that's better than after. Animal Driver. It's really hard to have fence stables at the start of that many harvests. Some games, it can be good, but that definition of some is pretty limited. I'm going to call this low D tier and not look back. If any of you report back with cool Animal Driver games, I'm interested in seeing them, but I think they are few and far between. Diligent Farmer. Pretty cool card. Often you want to use it for a free stone room or maybe clay really late in the game when you have maximized, for example, pastures, veggies, and stables maybe. Pastures, fields, grain, something like that. it does encourage you to farm and then give you a reward on the house side. So I would say it's pretty solid in this meta. Maybe not quite as high as other metas, but still pretty good. Dude with a backpack. Yeah, I feel like there's just a lot of very usable, solid cards. Alright, Reseller. You get to basically get the printed cost back on one of your improvements. It's a neat tactical card. I'm a fan of its design. I got to use it on Teacher's Desk, and that's really nasty. But I don't think it's that amazing. I'm going to put it in a high C tier. I have to confess, I don't even know what your comment means. Diligent equal to Clay Pit. I'm biased from my Clay Pit owner game being bad. Bad, okay. Hey, Kung Ming. Yeah, definitely good with guilds. And you know, maybe I'm biased for the one time I got to play it with Cheater's Desk, so... you know, make your own opinion if you want to. I won't complain. This card is not me. There it is for all 5 of you who understand that inside joke. I'm not going to explain it. Spice Trader, I think, is fine. I think it's better in metas that are less grow happy, but to take a move early on for something in round 11, I haven't been liking as much. I think Land Heir is different. We've seen me play Land Heir a couple times to good effect, but that's like room and reno parts in round 9. Whereas Spice Trader is veggies in round 11. So yeah, C tier. Reseller Fodder Chamber, we would love to see that. Or Wholesale Market. Alright, Spin Doctor. A little hard to use, but you do get to guarantee access to some hard-to-get spaces if you don't get blocked on traveling, which, you know, guarantee blank blank, or guarantee fill in the blank if is not a great sentence structure by me, but deal with it. It's probably a C tier card. Maybe it's worse. Maybe it's better. Heck if I know. You obviously don't want to use it too many rounds in a row because traveling won't give you much food and then you're kind of like burning an action. But sometimes Plowsow is worth 2 actions. I'm going to put it in D tier, with the possibility that that is a strong underrate, but I don't think so. Flax Farmer, not very strong in original on Play Agricola, but I guess it does form some neat combos. And getting grain when you take Reed Bank is something you might do a little more in this format. It is kind of hard to justify playing this as an early move, though. Usually in draft 10 games you have better stuff to play early. I can't put it in C tier. I can't. Alright, Dedery Reeve, which I mentioned while talking about Pickler. Dedery Reeve, as with Pickler, often gets your opponents to like fall into the trap of trying to hit the bonus. Admittedly, I haven't seen too many people fall into the trap. So it is one of the more frequently, this is just for wood occupations. There are some games where it is actually efficient for you to try to hit it. So I think Dedery Reeve is maybe on the good side of, if you're playing it, you're most likely to benefit the endgame bonus. That is probably a lot more talking than I need to talk for this card. Mid B, and I'm not thinking about what it's next to. Lab fans, true. Spin Doctor isn't really unlockable in 14 because opponents can block traveling. Interesting. Alright, I got to play a game with Rainier live where he tried to make Twin Researcher work. And it did work. And it was worth 2 points like 5 rounds after he played it. And I have seen that world, and I am never interested in running Twin Researcher ever again. Roughly the same as Breeder Buyer. Alright, Stable Milker. I've seen multiple people try to play it, and I wouldn't play it unless I had Stable Cleaner. Playing an Ock to get 1 cow later, and it's a real stretch to get 2 cows. Not a fan. The F tier is kind of big so far. Yo, Heroic Logic, what's up? Welcome. Pulverizer Plow. You can want it to work. Good luck with that, Alex. Report back with your results. Alright, the craziest art. We don't really want to think about what the Usiffrary is doing. This is a good card if you want to just ignore early Ox and take early room parts and try to possibly get a double build as your first build while not growing last. This is a really good card to support that. If you're just taking like 2 reed stones, a bunch of wood grabs, and a 2 reed grab in the first 4 rounds, then you can play this as your first Ock to feed for stage 2. It can be pretty good in the right circumstances. That said, again, in draft 10 you usually have cards you want to play early that are worth it. So I think Usiffrary gets worse in this meta, but I do like it quite a bit in smaller draft counts. Illusionist combos with it. That's funny. I'm going to put it at bottom of C, which is maybe a little too high for this arena format. Alright, Weakling. Speaking of ways to get 20 vegetables and be banned, this is one of them. It's also just really frickin' annoying to try to police Weakling. It is like vaguely possible in early growth games. Is it even here? There. Timber Shingle Maker. I think this card has some good potential. I've drafted it a couple times. That said, I haven't actually gotten around to using it, so that definitely caps its tier. But I think in this arena format, there are some games where you actually can justify throwing away wood that you might otherwise use for stables when you renovate and get bonus points. So I'm going to put this in D tier, but D tier often means there's a good use for it somewhere, sometime. Alright, Champion Breeder, as we get back to cards that I rated with Gray in the video. I still think this is quite good, even though generally Big House isn't going to hit this for too many points. This is one of the cards that really lets you think about not doing Big House. Definitely an A tier Ock to me still. I don't know, Stable Sergeant fits this meta really well. So I'll put it behind it, but, you know, also don't worry too much about what's behind what. At worst, Champ Breeder's often 3 points. I think at worst it's 0. But, yeah, you can get it to be 3 points without too much trouble. Alright, Parvenu. It's really hard to get a worthwhile doubling amount of Clay or Reed in round 7 or before, but it definitely works for some big Clay house games, and I guess big house games in general. If you even just want to use this as a 2 Reed move, it's still playable in that situation. I think Parvenu is fine in this format relative to how it was on Play Agricola. That said, on Play Agricola it was not very good. Can I even put this in C tier? Screw it, I'm putting it in C tier. Maybe that's ridiculous. Maybe it's not. Patroness is a better way to get extra Reed early on, probably. I think Patroness is really good. It is definitely worse than original Patroness, which gave you a resource immediately, but I think this is way more on theme with Patron. Still an A. Barely an A. What is wrong with you thinking Patroness is very overrated? People probably aren't using the building resource of their choice as good enough tempo. But you can definitely structure a game, in my opinion, where the resource you get from Patroness really boosts your tempo. Your Kingdom for Storehouse Keeper. Yeah, I don't think it's happening, Gray. I don't think anything in EIK... Well, I shouldn't say that. Lord of the Manor randomly appeared in D deck unexpectedly, so maybe there's a chance. But the problem with Storehouse Keeper is that Uwe would need to run out of creative ideas for cards that give you all types of resources, because it would need to fit that deck slot. And I think that's the least likely slot that Uwe will fail to get creative about. Moving on. Entrepreneur. Basically costs half a food for a resource every round, but you do need to not have that resource already. So there are some really fun combos with this, Bellfounder definitely being one of them. But if you can spend a certain resource every round for some way, somehow, or like eat a Clay and a Reed every harvest in the late game, like round 10 by the Clay, round 11 by the Reed, that would be really good with Entrepreneur. So it has a lot of cases that I think are underrated. I'm going to put it in C tier instead of D, where many of you may want to put it. Y'all may be right, but I'm going with C for now, if I can find it. There it is. Lodger. Lodger is really nasty. I think it's pretty good in this format. I don't think I've had the chance to play it. But this is your start build as long as you're not doing it super late. Yeah, you really want to play it in round 4 or 5. And that means you're not threatened by the build queue until much later. You do really need to play it safe when you actually build that room. And the penalty does really suck. But I think Lodger is quite good. And I have not seen it played much. Dare I put it in A? No. But it's very good. You've had 2 Lodger kills so far? Yeah. If you're really aware of what people are doing and people aren't careful about Lodger, you can definitely kill it. And don't be the killed. Be the killer. You really have to play responsibly. But I think that should not prevent it from staying pretty high up. Alright. I think this is the first ban watch list card. Forest Clearer is super duper good, and I think it's even better in this arena format. The huge benefit is that you can turn all those crappy 2 wood actions in the mid and late game that nobody wants into 3 wood, 1 food actions that you want. So good. So good. Also, there's the random 4 wood action that turns into temporary porter. And of course, if you take 3 wood, you still get the extra wood. You just don't get an extra food. The tempo on this thing is crazy. Godly Spouse. It's a fun idea, card-wise. I have no idea about the name. Just like, how often are you growing with your second action? If the growth queue is around build rooms instead of the grow space, then it works. But then you vacate build and help people behind you in the grow queue. If you're the only person growing it around, you can grow second and get an extra action, but then you're trading your second action. You're delaying your second real action. I don't think this is very good. Maybe there are some uses for it, but you're not going to catch me thinking about those use cases too much. Where is it? Ironically, this works with second spouse? True. I mean, very ironically given the names, right? Next up is Carter. And Carter is really fun to play in the mid game if you're one of the first people to grow. Often when you're growing first or sometimes second, you can have some mid game rounds where you get some real big resource piles. So if you're like growing first, a really great sequence can be the first person to grow with your first action in round 5 or 6 or whatever, then play Carter, second action, next round, profit. And sometimes it's really good in the late game too. So the amount of extra food it can give you is pretty good. Unlike Original, for any of you who autopilot and played it in the original form, it doesn't work on Reedstone food and stuff anymore. It has to be from accumulation spaces now. I don't think that really matters much in this meta. Resources are pretty plentiful in the meta. I'm going to say this is a low B tier card. Rock Beater. You can use this to guarantee Reedstone food actions early on. This does basically only work on Reedstone food, the first half of it. The fun benefit of Rock Beater is that stone rooms are at a discount, which means you can combo this with Carpenter or, God forbid, Carpenter's Hammer and get some really cheap stone rooms. Often if you're taking Reedstone food too much in the early game, you're helping your opponents too much. On Play Agricola, this card's win when played percent was 19. So your win percent on average should be like 25. And Rock Beater is like way below that when played, which basically means people are not using it correctly, and that's when people are taking a bunch of Reedstone food early on, in my opinion. So don't fall into that trap, and Rock Beater is then sometimes playable, which by my definitions puts it in high D tier. Oyster Eater. I want to say this card is good. If anyone's going fishing combo, it's definitely better. If you don't have anyone left to skip, then you just get the point. And a lot of times you do get the point and not need to skip anyone. I think Oyster Eater's definitely good in fishing combos. That said, we generally don't like fishing combos over here, so this is going to go into C tier. Bunny Breeder is a fine round 1 occupation, maybe round 2 occupation if you have nothing else to do. Generally, you want to put 6 food on round 7, 8 food on round 9, something like that to get you through the harvest that can be troublesome. It's fine. The tempo you get from the mid-game food can be pretty clutch. I haven't seen it played very much. I'm not sure if that's just because it isn't in my drafts recently. Where do I want to put this? I'm going to say it's more usable than people think. It's definitely not intimidating. Like, if someone plays Bunny Breeder, you're not scared. On the playability axis, I think it's... Yeah, that's where I'm claiming it has uses. Better things to do in Draft 10, that's usually the case. Master Huntsman is definitely a card I have not seen the community figure out yet, but it is just a really good early food source. Maybe it's a little worse in this meta because there are a lot of other really good early food sources, but this is definitely one of them. It does create more competition for the cookeries, which are already somewhat contested in a lot of games. But there are games where they're not contested, and then Master Huntsman is pretty great. On Play Agricola, this is an A-tier card. Draft 10 Revised, I don't think it's an A-tier card. But I'll give it a high B. You haven't seen it at all, interesting. Yeah, there's just a lot of cards now, right? Is this Stone Custodian the remix? We've already rated Stone Custodian. It's right here. Visionary. I do not like Visionary in this meta. It is already scary to be forced to grow last or extra last in this meta. Sometimes you can get really good benefits out of, like, the breeding pigs, but sometimes you can't. It would take a pretty special game for me to play Visionary. I just think there are enough weird grow cues that happen in Visionary games where you don't just grow last, you grow extra last. You haven't seen Bunny Breeder at all, interesting. So yeah, I think Visionary is fun when you play it, and then it causes you problems, and then you're sad most of the time. I'm putting this in D tier. So wrecked by early grow? Well, if it's early grow, you can still grow in round 8 with Visionary if you're careful. It's not mandatory round 11, unless all players already have grown. That limit gets restricted. But early grow, you are more likely to get screwed by weird grow queues and grow extra last. I think. Hardworking Man is a card that I thought had no uses, and then I saw it get played well once. This Day Labor doesn't combo with things that work on Day Labor because this card is not the Day Labor space. So I don't know why this card got written this way. But if you're last to build, you get to build and get a major at the same time and 2 food. So it kind of saves you an action and gives you 2 food at the cost of the action. It's not F tier. That's what I'm trying to say here. It is confusing, but it is not the most confusing card. I think Shaving Horse is way more confusing. I don't know, Rubenstock. I don't know. Uwe moment. Alright, Curator. I don't think I've ever seen this used. How insulting that you still have to pay for this point. That is insulting. Slurry Spreader. It's pretty nice to get 2 food for every last grain you harvest when your field clears from a grain field. Like, this thing's amazing with Clearing Spade, and I've seen that happen a couple times. How much do I like this in Draft 10? Not that much. I think it's a lot better in low draft counts, where you're just more inclined to do farming stuff anyway. Yeah, it gets hurt by the format a lot. Alright, Homekeeper. Once you learn the good arrangements with Homekeeper, the farm arrangement really isn't difficult to do. It is pretty loudly signaled because, yeah, the Homekeeper arrangements are pretty specific. So there isn't much of a surprise aspect to it, but it is basically a free room once you renovate. And are forced to do some farming. I like Homekeeper a lot. I don't think it's quite as good as, like, Lodger, but I guess I'll just put it with Diligent. Okay. Controversial card here. I have wanted this card banned for ever. I think it is just really bad design to let this happen, and I also think it has games where it's oppressively strong. Conjurer being an example of a card that really turns it on. And I assume there's a good few more. But if you can ever just use it to grow in round 3, it's pretty unfair. And I think there are lines where you just get to do that even if you don't have great support. What do you need? You need 2/3 wood actions, a 2 read action, You need to play Bedmaker. You need to build. You need the grain action. So, what would that be? 3 wood, 1 grain. Two reed. Bedmaker or 3 wood. And then, yeah, I guess you have to get lucky in round 2. But to do it by round 4 is way easier. So I think I've been talked off the ledge on like needing it to be banned. But I don't think that stops me from putting it in ban watch list territory. Oh yeah, 4 wood Ock would work. Lazy Soman has one really good use case, and it's pretty decent in that use case. You basically go to cultivation a bunch of times in a row in round 14 and decline sow until you've gotten as many fields as you want, and then you sow. So it's delaying all your plows, which is good tempo. I think this is a solid C tier occupation. Alright, freshmen we've talked about a lot on stream. I think it's ban-worthy. They're just combos where it's insane. Absolutely ridiculously insane. Okay, Clutterer. You want Clutterer to be good, and in Draft 10 you do have the most possible options to find things that trigger it. But it's just really hard to set up a game plan for it in practice. Because again, Draft 10 gives you good options reliably, and you don't necessarily have to search for the keyword accumulation spaces. So I think this card is pretty bad in this meta. And I haven't seen a good game for it, but maybe they exist. Furniture Carpenter, pretty lame. Someone needs to have the joinery before you can even use it, and then you can turn 2 food to a point, which is like barely a positive thing. Pretty clear F tier to me. Is that our first F tier card? No. That starts with an F. It's the second. There we go. Alright, Field Merchant. Comes with a wood reed, so it can't be that bad. And if you decline improvements, you can get stuff. You don't often decline improvements. Like, if you'd rather get a food than your minor, that maybe happens once in a while, but declining major, not super often. There are probably some combos. Like, Equipper plays all your minors early, then you play Field Merchant, and you're declining all your improvement actions because you don't have anything left in your hand. So I guess that would work. But yeah, Equipper doesn't give you the action itself, the literal action, so you wouldn't be able to directly combo this. Anyway, I don't think it's that good. I don't think it's C tier. I think it's worse than C tier. There are not many times I would play it. Tinsmith Master we have, right? We've had Tinsmith Master in the previous set. I think we have. It and Stable Hand are weirdly in this list. Alright, Trimmer. It's probably better than I think. No? Tinsmith Master is new? Really? I thought it was in the... Is it not? It's new? Okay. My bad. I'm just so familiar with it from IRL, I guess. My bad. So Tinsmith Master lets you turn 1x1s with no stable into 3 capacity, much like... What's the name of that free miner? Lawn fertilizer. So that side of it is helpful. And the other side of Tinsmith Master is also helpful, getting bonus crops. So I like Tinsmith Master quite a bit. I think that extra capacity and that extra sowing is also good in Draft 10 Big House. So I think this is actually going to be like high C, low B. Let's say high C. Alright, Trimmer. I have seen enough games where people are building pastures 1x1. Maybe that's an overexposure to Carpenter's bench. But there was also that game where Rubenstock, like, hedgekeepered 4 rounds in a row. And if you do that, this is 8 stone. We like occupations that give 8 stone. That's rare. But it's going to go in D with all the things that are rarely good. Because it's rarely very good, I'm going to say. Museum Caretaker. I love making this thing work. Collector is obviously a cheat code. It's more fun to, like, get it started with Harvest House or something. It is a fun game. It is a fun game when I can throw away all my plans and try to get as many museum points as I can. Sometimes it works. I'm not convinced it's great in this arena format. It's just really hard to play without Collector. And I'm not convinced that it's worth the trouble for, like, 3 to 5 endgame points. I don't think I can put it in C. Well, maybe I'll put it in C. I think there are reports of people getting 12 points from it, so... If you have Collector, good job. You're a good player. Where is it? Also, didn't I put Spice Trader in already? There it is. Alright, I'm putting it back of C tier. Its ceiling is too high in the very rare game. Alright, Blighter. It prohibits you from playing any more occupations, and it's not amazing. I guess in some games where you're turboing out all of your ox super fast, you can play this in round 9 and get 3 points. Without an Ock booster, I find it hard to justify, but that's also because I like drafting late Ox a good bit. This is D tier for me. Acquirer. So good. Slightly worse Collector. Me and Gray rated it super highly. I don't think this arena meta is strong enough to take down Acquirer's benefits. You are probably going to grow last or close to it when you're running Acquirer games, but the early flexibility and food engine you can create with it is really intense. Wolf is pretty cool. I think in the current arena format, there are enough ways to proc Wolf at the time of your choosing, as opposed to whenever the next time you're just taking those actions, the wood and clay actions. So I think that makes Wolf slightly better. And dare I put it into A tier? Probably not. But it's quite good. The fact that it lets you get away with not having any grain support and take grain once and get a second grain can often be pretty cool. Also, high quality on the art for Wolf. What a job that is to be the Wolf. I guess maybe I am putting it in A? No, it's not better than Old Miser in this format. I swear I put Spice Trader in already. I totally did. It's just on here twice. Pioneer. I have seen some pretty good Pioneer games, and I think the boost that it has compared to the original version, where now it gives you when you play, it procs when you play, pretty darn important. There are some really fun patterns that you can do with Pioneer, play patterns that involve you taking Major and Sheep in Stage 1. Obviously, when you're running Pioneer and Outrider, maybe not obvious, but when you're running this type of card, you want to be the first person to grow. You want to think about, can you Reno when Reno comes up? You want to take single pig or single cow. It's way more efficient. Is Pioneer better than Patroness? Probably. Do I have Patroness too high? I probably have Patroness too high. Sid thinks Pioneer is exceptionally good. Sid is usually correct. And I am not really seeing any bad Pioneer games when it's played, and I'm seeing it played a good bit. Alright, moving Patroness down half a tier. Putting Pioneer at the back of A tier. Calling Pioneer an A tier card sounds so ridiculous. Because it's like a D tier card in original. Maybe that's partially being played wrong, where I feel like it's a D. Next is Emergency Cellar. I think this is a really nice food out. Really solid tactical benefit to having this card. That said, it does kind of imply that your game is not in a great place, because you'd rather just have amazing food tempo. Sometimes that just doesn't happen though, especially on aggressively growing games. So I think Emergency Cellar is good to have, even if you don't end up playing it. Does that get it into B tier? Probably not. It's probably just a C tier card. Nothing wrong with that, though. Where is it? Has a big shed. There it is. Have, like, the pictures been in good order recently? Like, these pictures are actually lining up with what's here? That's pretty cool. Also, there's 2 blackberry farmers. DVLOT thinks Pioneer is S tier. Blackberry Farmer. It's tempting to run Blackberry Farmer, but it kind of only works with like Hedgekeeper-ish and Carpenter's Bench. So, I mean, it's like 15 food with Carpenter's Bench. And I don't really want to think about playing it otherwise. Especially in Draft 10. It's pretty rare that you actually want this effect. Land Surveyor, also really hard to play in Draft 10 in my opinion. Land Surveyor can be really fun in Draft 7 or Draft 8. I think it's just a lot more common that you might overdo fields for some reason and have more benefits for it. This is a fun Field Doctor card. Can't really think of other purposes I would play it. So it falls pretty far in D tier. I think it's more playable in lower draft counts and pretty unplayable in this set. But I guess rarely playable is where it's going to live. You had Land Surveyor once with J.A. Tiller. That is gross. That is gross. Though, fun question. Would you rather have Land Surveyor or Stew? True, the minor fields do count for Land Surveyor. It's not field tiles. I don't think I've ever considered that. So yeah, field cards count towards it. That's helpful for sure. Yeah, I mean, the thing with this is, like, in Rubenstock's example, I think you'd rather have Stew, which doesn't say great things about an Ock. Alright, Braid Maker. It is bad Basket Maker's wife, but it's also a bit like Basket Weaver. Unlike Basket Weaver, you don't get it immediately, but you get the same discount. And then, whether or not you end up with BMW, you do have a way to convert a reed to 2 food each harvest. Not very good. Not very good in this meta, I will say. Also, this D tier is pretty large. Dentist. I have seen enough games in this meta where there is huge amounts of wood injection, and I think in those games, Dentist is fine. I'm going to put this in C tier. I think it is more playable in this arena format and more usable. I don't even know what these cards are anymore. I don't know the art on the Eox well at all. Dentist is buffed? No, it is cleaned up. The original had a different wording for the effect, but I think this effect is net exactly the same, but a lot cleaner. Yeah, obviously don't play Dentist if there's no wood injection. That would be almost as bad as buying a joinery and using it. Because you get to put the wood on it later. Oh, okay, sure, it is slightly buffed. Fair enough. Anyway, Recluse, I think, is hard to play in this arena format. You pretty often have a minor improvement you're very happy to play early. And maybe you can draft Recluse late in a draft where you don't have any early minors, and then proc it for 5 food, 2 wood, something like that. Obviously, passing minors work great in Recluse games, and you can have majors. You are allowed to have majors. But I think this card is a lot better in lower draft formats. You're less likely to want to run it. And also, I think you're less likely to have big Recluse games. Because I think once in a while on Play Agricola, I was able to get 3 wood from it, but you should absolutely not try to do that in Arena, I don't think. So this is a D tier card, unfortunately. I want it to be better. You think it's not insignificant? God forbid Rogue shows up eventually in Revised. I would hate that for things that would combo with no minors, but I don't think there's anything else. Illusionist is what Gray wants more combos with. Okay. Gray wants a lot of things. Grain Thief. I have a hard time justifying Grain Thief picks and plays in this format. It is also less combo friendly than it was in original, and it already wasn't very strong. It's a fun effect for sure, but I don't think it's very good. I'm sure it has some good uses, like providing infinite beer kegs if you have 3 grain fields. Trying to think, should I put this higher than D tier? Maybe D+. Godmother gives you a veggie every time you grow, basically. I guess there are some exceptions. Are there any cards that let you grow that don't give you a literal family growth action? If there are, that's a silly non-bow, but it is a non-bow. Most games, I think I've said this already today, most games in this arena format, I think 3 or 4 people are getting to 5 people. 3 or 4 players are getting to 5 people. So if Godmother is like a guaranteed veg it 3 times during the game, you think the question is if Grain Thief should be lower than D tier. Fair. Shed Builder, it topped the rankings when Gray and I rated the cards. I think it is a little worse in this meta, because we did not rate cards with draft 10 in mind. Shed Builder, C tier, it gives veggies. So true, Mighty. So true. I found it a little harder to use. The upside is still really, really good. Solid A tier. Seed Servant is a card I'm a big fan of. Taking veg is something I find myself doing as my veg source a good bit, and having Seed Servant really makes me want to take veg as my veg source. Free sow actions are great, and I do tend to run baking plans more than the average player, so I like having the ability to take a grain and then bake. It has some fun combos, and is just solid on its own. I think this is mid to high B tier. I think it also is generally good when you're running rooms first, farming second. Fur Cutter is a card that is pretty darn good in this format. It is kind of silly how good, like, 15 wood fur cutters. And it's definitely fine as 7 to 8 late wood that you play after growing. Fur Cutter, pretty good. This is extra buffed Archer, Sid. Like, the most buffed you can buff a card. Yeah, right? Unrecognizable. And you get a food, true, but not even 2 food, so I'm not really going to award points for that. Next is Pipe Smoker. I am not super impressed by Pipe Smoker, but I have to admit there are probably some good games for it. It does encourage you to do really good stuff, as in get early grain fields, and then gives you the right kind of compensation. It's really hard for wood to be the wrong kind of compensation. I'm going to put this mid to low C tier. It's not enough compensation on its own to risk growing extra last. Econ-chan with a very appropriate emote somehow. Kindling Gatherer, pretty solid, especially if you have made it to Big House and you have a reason to go bottom feeding or take Reedstone food, or your table's just letting you have Resource Market a bunch for Reedstone food wood. Wood is the right thing to get extra of in pretty much any game of Agricola ever. Wood and food. So it hasn't been played as much as I would think, so it's probably a little harder to play than you want it to be. I don't know how you could really say that, but maybe there are just other early occupations you somehow want to play more? I don't know. I'm putting it at the bottom of B tier. Maybe that's too low. Land Air, mentioned already this stream as one of the rare stage 1 place a bunch of stuff in the future cards that is still good in this format, or still just as good in this format, because the stuff that you're getting from Land Air is really relevant for continuing to run your big house plans. So the clay is for renovation or a clay room, the wood is for a wood room or fences. Definitely very helpful stuff that you get from Land Air. I'm putting this near the top of B tier. Scrap Collector also gives you wood and clay, and it gives you it faster. But the amount is kind of underwhelming. For whatever reason, the timing on Scrap Collector is just feels less useful. Just maybe wrong. Land Air is probably a little too high there. Because I feel like Scrap Collector is a C+ card. It's not close enough to Wood Collector. It's just less than Land Air. I mean, if you play Scrap Collector in round 3, you get that last clay in round 9, which is the same time as Land Air. I guess part of Land Air is that round 9 is actually not that late. Alright, Kadar. I'm sorry if that's not the right pronunciation. I admit I do not know the pronunciation of this word for sure. Each time you build an improvement, you get a wood, or for some reason you can take a clay instead. Should be okay. Should be like 5, 6 wood throughout the game, but it's definitely slower than Bonehead, because it doesn't work on occupations. It's probably less total payout in a lot of games. I think it's just a C tier card. And like the speed that you get the resources is kind of slow, so do you really want to spend this early action on this before you play the rest of your improvements? I don't know, I'm not convinced. I'm putting it under Dentist. Next is Mayor Candidate. I think Mayor Candidate is a really good card, and probably not worse in this arena meta relative to a more reasonable meta, I'll say, like Draft 8. Gives you room and or well parts or things that look similar to those. Like, if you're not building a room or fences or the well with this stuff, that means you're doing something better most of the time. I think Mayor Candidate has a really great baseline value. Once in a while, you get tripped up by the remaining wood or stone in your supply, but you do get to spend the joinery like wood. You get to throw all the wood away on your joinery. So it won't hurt Mayor Candidate. The stone, I mean, be careful. And if you have to lose 1 point at the end of the game, it might not matter a lot of the time. I think Mayor Candidate is... Dare I put it in A? I probably just need to boost a bunch of these, because, like, Old Miser, Wolf, and Mayor Candidate are all pretty darn good. But I'm going to do it like this for now. Tax Collector. I don't know if we've gotten Stonehouse stuff yet. But as far as Stonehouse stuff goes, Tax Collector is not particularly strong. I think Stonehouse stuff in general suffers in this arena format from just being less competitive overall. So I think those things combined put Tax Collector into D tier. And it's probably like C- in Draft 8. Is what I'll claim. There are some combos that make Tax Collector good. There's not many combos. Master Tanner is a fun alternate capacity card. It can be difficult in some games to get the boar or cow to eat. You ideally draft Master Tanner after already having support for early boars or cows. But in those games, Master Tanner can be pretty good. At worst, this is like a mid-B tier card. I don't know if I can be much better than that either, because some games you just have no chance to use it. Pen Builder is a really fun capacity helper. And is probably worth playing anytime you can... Like, if you don't have any other capacity for Collector, you still probably want to play this in Collector and breed early cows. Acquirer works well with this. Stuff like that. But as far as capacity cards go, this is definitely not the best. So I think this goes into D tier for having some uses. Once in a while, it'll be great. And most of the time, it's not. The D tier is just filled with this kind of thing. And that is in my opinion, something that happens due to Draft 10, is that it reduces the amount of times you can justify these alternate cards that you might otherwise play if there's nothing better in your hand. Like, a lot of these cards are, like, barely better than actions if you play them right. Sometimes they're a lot better than normal board actions, but Draft 10 just concentrates the cards that get played into the very reliable and good stuff. Big House really likes alternative capacity, that's true. But yeah, I think you just frequently enough find capacity that's better than Pen Builder. Because, like, as far as capacity goes, Pen Builder is not really good, right? You know, maybe there's some really good wood injection games, and it's totally fine. But I think the penalty, it's already kind of risky to spend a lot of wood. Master Renovator. I think this card gets hit by draft 10 tax a lot as well. I just can't imagine finding the time to play Master Renovator in a draft 10 game. Like, it definitely helps you to, like, play a Scholar game. But I'm just not a big fan of Stone House in this arena format. Like, it does give you the actions, and you get to save a resource on your Reno, which can be really helpful. But it's also, like, too late to, relative to other Reno helpers, if you want to do something like clay supports. Like, the Reno in round 7 is a little late. It's okay, but it's a little late. I'll avoid putting this in D tier. No, I'm putting it in D tier. It's a lot more playable in Draft 8, I think. Master Fencer is a solid Stonehouse card. It's not as good as Plow Driver, but it's better than Manservant, is how I would think about it. I wouldn't go to Stone just if I had a Master Fencer, but if I had a Master Fencer and Scholar, I would definitely think about it. If I had... I don't know about Master Renovator. But I think you see where I'm going with this. In this arena format, you probably want a lot of Stonehouse support before going for it. In other formats, you can definitely justify Master Fencer a lot more easily. So I think this is a mid-C tier card in this arena format, and is probably C plus B minus in Draft 8. Stallright. I am a big fan of Stallright. It made the honorable mentions in the video with Gray. I think it is slightly better in this arena format when your hand is generally better. And this is also some good capacity early on in games. Like, getting to 3 Ox early lets you hold a breeding pair. And I think that is pretty good. I'm going to put this, I guess, high B tier. Alright, I think I'm going to make the call, actually, to move some stuff up. And put Stallright with them. How are we doing? We're 2 hours in. I guess not quite 2 hours in, and we're making good time. Dung Collector, really fun. I have seen plenty of Dung Collector fields be plowed in this arena format and be good. Has some really good combos like Slurry or Fodder Planter. And Champion Breeder, Omni Farmer, these things all work with Dung Collector really nicely, supporting breeding animal plans, which are generally great food sources. I don't know if it's A, because you're not really getting more than 3 fields out of it most games. High B tier. Next is Plow Builder. Plow Builder basically turns your joinery into wood to 2 food. It changes that to wood to food field. Wood to food field is good. Having to buy the joinery, less good. Letting you buy the joinery with a minor improvement, sure. Taking the action to play Plow Builder, I guess that's fine. It's kind of like Steam Plow, right? Steam Plow is an Ock, except doesn't come with a point. And forces you to buy the joinery for the points instead. And if I think Steam Plow is like B or B minus in this format, I need to knock it down a bit for being an Ock. I'll just put it in C tier. You can more reliably get good plow help in draft 10, and I would not call Plow Builder good plow help. It is plow help. It's not easy getting on my A tier. Very true. You know what's annoying me is the ordering for this stuff is great. It's all in really nice order. But I want to clear out a couple of these banned cards first. I'm getting annoyed looking at them, quite honestly. So, gonna move out of order for a second and do Garden Designer, which is absolutely a banned card. You need to make sure you have empty fields in the endgame, but you basically eat all of your crap and get a slightly better return. So, for example, if you have 4 empty fields, you turn 4 food into 4 points, and then you can make up to 8 trades of 3 food for a point on top of that 4 for 4. So, like, you definitely want to eat your pairs of pigs, because your pairs of pigs go from 1 point to 2 points. Your pairs of cows obviously do better. Even your pairs of sheep are better as food. You just eat down everything you have, basically, that you can eat in your hearth, or better, and you just slam all that food into marginally better points on top of the nice 3 for 3, 4 for 4, 6 for 6. Because this is not limited to field tiles. Field cards also work. Yeah, Garden Designer, pretty wild. There was an alpha testing game I didn't stream where I had, like, 7 fields and 50-something food. It was stupid. I didn't win that game because there was another stupid card doing stupid things, but yeah, Garden Designer, definite ban. I want to get Craft Teacher out of here. I guess I'll talk about it later. Why is Stable Hand here? That's so weird. Craft Teacher is last, of course it is. I feel like I don't really need to talk about Craft Teacher more, but there's just some really oppressive games it can have, and at worst, even if you only proc it once, you still did a really good thing while buying a guild, and you probably didn't buy the joinery. You probably bought pottery or BMW that you were happy to have anyway. Alright. Back up to Field Doctor, I think. Sorry for jumping around. I just really got tired of seeing Craft Teacher and Garden Designer. Yes, Field Doctor. Really fun game plan to run Field Doctor. Those of you saw my stream the other day. No, not my stream the other day. No, I put this game on YouTube, the one where I got to run Cesspit Field Doctor in Draft 10. There are definitely some good Field Doctor games still in Draft 10, but a lot more rare than in Draft 8. Because small houses are just really fun, in my opinion, to go all farming, have a little cheat code to grow once, and then figure out your people points in the endgame if you can. But yeah, I think it's nowhere near as good in this meta. It's probably a B-. Or worse? Dare I put it worse? No. But it's definitely not something you should aim for too often when you get to draft it. Draft 10 does mean you're more likely to get a second grow cheat. True. Yeah, 2 grow cheats, also very good. But 1 grow cheat can be a little difficult. Speaking of a little difficult, running Motivator, you can use or you can get an extra action if you haven't fully grown, if you filled out your farm. Hard to do in this format, hard to justify. Part of it, I think, is that this format, you get to 5 reliably enough that in the end game, you might not even get to use the bonus action. Yeah, Field Doctor and Motivator are definitely 2 great Big Country cards. But Big Country is just a big problem. It's really hard to run Motivator. I'm putting it down with Beer Tent Operator, which maybe I'm too low on, but whatever. Prophet, really nice card in this meta, when sometimes renovations and fences can be tough. You do need to do the renovation to get the fences on Prophet. At least, I assume. Yeah, that's how I'm reading it. But the benefit of having an Ock that lets you do these things is just really great tactical flexibility. If you don't need it, you don't need it. It's obviously not as good as Established Person if you want to build your first room in clay, because Established Person gives you the reno part for free. But, you know, it's still usable in that kind of idea. I'll give it a C+. I think tactical benefits are pretty big sometimes. The Miller gives you the ability to build a baking improvement immediately, and then also gives you bakes when other people use grain seeds. So I don't think the second part of that does that much in this arena format, but getting to build a bake improvement, even if it's just the hearth, can be really good tactically. If it's late major, you can use it for the fireplace if it's late major. You can, if people are trying to oven block you by building other majors, you can play this and get your oven. So, you know, it's not great, but it definitely has its use. Is it better than D+? I'm going to say it's better than D+. I'm not sure, Sid, if you're talking about Prophet or Miller, but yes. Miller, yeah. The dream is having freshman Miller when someone else has private teacher field watchman. I don't think that's the dream, because then you're letting someone else have field watchman. The dream is like someone else is running private teacher cattle feeder for some reason. But anyway, freshman is up here, so I'll end with that. Elder. Sometimes you really need to get your high Ock prereq. I can also see playing this for Cesspit, for example. Especially in a late seat. Sometimes it's useful. I haven't really found a game yet this season where I've wanted to play it. So I don't think I'm going to put this higher than D. Thanks for the backup, Sid. Yeah, something like Woodcard is great. Seed, Almanac, stuff like that. Stork. Like, I'll play Elder in a Stork game. But it is kind of rare, I think, in practice that you want that kind of game. Prodigy is really fun to run in lower draft counts, aka bad drafts, where your cards are not very good. But it's already borderline unplayable in lower draft counts. I think it's basically unplayable in draft 10. In my opinion, you probably want to have 4 or 5 improvements minimum before playing Prodigy as your first Ock. I think that situation is just so rare to do without stretching for it. I'm putting this at the top of F tier. Beneficiary on me and Gray's top 10. I think it's quite good. Cards that help you play cards in draft 10 are generally good. I don't think this is an exception at all. It lets you play a 3 or 4 Ock prereq minor immediately on your third Ock action. Yeah, it's just very good here. If I see a good Prodigy game, please YouTube it. I don't know how to respond to that. This is just A tier. Maybe A minus. Uncaring Parents. A bit of an odd name, but it's an okay Stonehouse Ock. Probably not worth more than 3. Sometimes 4. Rarely 4. Ideally, you're playing it on Scholar. So it's just another few bonus points as a free Scholar action, and it's totally fine in that case. But I feel like its value is pretty close to Tax Collector, which I put down here. As a Stonehouse Ock that's definitely not worth going to on its own. Imported Timber? True. Yeah, we need miners that require no occupations and don't want to be played super early. Because most of the no occupation stuff wants to get out really early. Even if it didn't have that prereq. Imported Timber is not one of those things. Yeah, okay, so that's Uncaring Parents. Mummy's Boy. Honestly, I don't think I've ever played Mummy's Boy, despite it being available to me in IRL games since 2018. And it's just annoying to read. And I'm just gonna put it in F and not think about it ever again. And if one of you comes to me with a good Mummy's Boy game and puts it in the YouTube comments, you know, that's cool. Am I missing it? Or is it not here? I think it's missing. Tree Guard combo? Oh, sure. It's missing, right? It's F tier. Alright, I'm claiming it's missing. It's not showing up in these images. But F tier for me. Agricultural Laborer gives you basically 8 clay in the mid and late game. It's fine. Sometimes. But it's also not hard to just not do anything with clays number 4 through 8 out of these 8 or something like that. Maybe the couple of times I've played it badly. That said, all it does is give you clay, and it doesn't make it necessarily easy. So, into the D tier it goes. Stone Importer lets you buy some somewhat expensive stone. I mean, it's not expensive if you're, like, immediately sending it through the stone carver or stone sculptor. But it's a little rare to be buying stone in breeding phases. It's a bit of a weird timing app also. Which means you can't immediately buy it and then use it to feed. Yeah, kind of hard to justify playing it in my opinion. Maybe I should try playing it more, which means in the first place. But I'm not convinced it's very good. I'll give it a high D for uncertainty, but it could be a C and it could be an F. I just don't know. Alright, Nightworker is banned for being annoying to the game flow, and because it can form exceedingly annoying combos. Yeah, it's just very annoying. I don't recommend including this card whenever you play Agricola. It also causes... Well, part of the annoyance is, like, if you have a combo with something like Outskirts Director or Lasso, technically, the way the words read, you can hop an extra second action before the work phase. Like, not fair. Okay, Den Builder is another capacity card if you're in clay or stone, like Homekeeper is. But instead of having a weird farm arrangement, the cost is just grain, food, food. That's cool. I have actually not seen an amazing Den Builder game in Arena this season, and I've seen Den Builder played like 3 times. For some reason, like, I just haven't seen people have spare grain and food when they would otherwise use it, and I don't know if that's just a fluke based on the drafts. I'm going to say it's a fluke based on the drafts. I think Den Builder is pretty good. I'm going to put it in high B tier. I think it's probably better than Homekeeper and Animal Tamer's Apprentice. Oh, Sid, in Revised, you can discard resources at any time. So you can discard your, like, your 2 wood and then take 6. It's been super awkward every time for you, Ace Spade. Yeah. So I can't really explain why, but it seems like Den Builder is way more awkward than it sounds. I think it shouldn't be. Autumn Mother is a card that I've probably been too harsh on. It fits in the category of things that potentially give stage 1 growth, and I automatically want banned for that reason. Admittedly, it's really hard to run Autumn Mother successfully. You basically need 4 extra food and your room and have Autumn Mother played to grow in stage 1, and that's not easy. That's definitely not easy. It's probably good in this format, though. Especially in late grow games. The if you have room in your house is more common in draft 10. I'm gonna put it in bottom half of A tier and possibly be overrating it. I mean, in good games, you have a lot of food anyway, so. Seed Researcher. You get 2 food and a free ock each time grain and veg are both taken in a round. Or taken and not hopped away from. I often want Seed Researcher to work. Admittedly, it's pretty hard to get to work. Basically what you're hoping for is that someone has a grain seeds combo and then you can take veg yourself. More often than the reverse. And both of those are more often than wanting to take both grain and veg in the same round yourself. But I think this card has some good uses. Is the frequency of it working low enough to be D tier? I don't think so. I think it's low C tier. Yeah, you can also proc it the first time after you've taken both of them in the round. It doesn't need to be you on both of them, though. It can be anyone. I guess you weren't saying you, yeah. A lot of good drafts don't need grain or veg, yes. Gotta hope someone goes for the cattle feeder, indeed. Sample Stable Maker. The way this set of cards works, Sample Stable Maker is pretty annoying to exist. It's one of the 2 cards that lets you rebuild stables. The other being Lumber Pile. But Sample Stable Maker is actually good. In terms of what it gives you back. Obviously, it forms incredible combos with Carpenter's Axe, Stable Cleaner, etc. Stable Tree, and those. And then some games you'll draft Sample Stable Maker and not find any stable help, but that's pretty rare. I'm debating internally whether this gets an A tier or not. Probably not, but the upside is incredibly high in the rare game where you get everything. But yeah, it's definitely something you need to watch out aggressively for in your drafts. And I think it is worth drafting quite early in draft 10 for the upside. Pretty sure you played a Sample Stable game without much help and it still won? Well, yeah, that's true too. I mean, you have your stables for temporary capacity. Maybe you get to fence soon enough to not lose your animals when you return the stables, and then you turned 1 wood into grain food miner in net. So Sid, in practice, I think it's a little less than always. Yeah, I think you're slightly overestimating the frequency of finding the combo. Because I have been, like, sometimes thinking about that during drafts. Like, if I was able to first pick Sample Stable, would it have come through? And the answer is no, a surprising amount of the time to me. Alright, Field Cultivator. Only have played it once, but I was, like, fairly happy. It was a stream game. I think Field Cultivator's fine. I don't think it's ever going to be amazing, because the timing of getting the resources is pretty late, usually. And what are you going to do with late clay, for example? It's hard to say. But, I mean, this is 7 building resources in a lot of games. I'll put it in C tier. at the end. With so many cards now, even drafts with 10 cards can be garbage. Depends on your definition of garbage. The odds of seeing 6 or 7 bad cards in your pack of 10 is maybe higher, but the odds that you see all garbage cards has to be lower, I think. That's what I mean by it depends on your definition of garbage. Though I haven't run the numbers, so I'm not totally sure. Next card is Reader. It's kind of hard to get 7 Ox in this format because everyone's Ox are good enough that people just keep playing them throughout the game. I didn't mention it for Stallright, but I've rarely been hitting 7 Ox with Stallright, and I guess I wasn't really hitting 7 frequently with Stallright in Original. But I think this format it's harder to hit 7 Ox. I might just be wrong, and Reader is probably a very good reason to hit 7 Ox. Especially in Draft 10, your cards are better. Alright, I'll put this up with Homekeeper and Den Builder. Maybe that's a little too high. But I don't think it can be worse than that. Draft 10, you get enough drafts where you're okay playing your 7th Ock. In this case, your 7th Ock comes out 6th for Reader. Alright, Child Ombudsman. Hugely good. We have seen some amazing Child Ombudsman games. I think this is clear S tier. Ban watch list for sure. Maybe it's just fully should be banned. No, yeah, I think the consensus is that it should fully be banned. There are enough people on that wavelength. And I agree with it. Site Manager lets you build a major, substitute, like for the well, the wood and the stone with 2 food. It's fun. The substitution isn't a lot of value, but you're basically paying the food cost for the Ock and saving resources, and the action to play the Ock gets you the action back that you would to build the major. So it is a net positive. I think it's a C tier card. It's pretty much always a small positive value. And maybe the surprise is useful. The element of surprise and being able to afford a major that other people didn't realize you could buy. Alright, Henpecked Husband. More weird spouse stuff going on. So this is the same as Godly Spouse, except it's when you build on your second action instead of grow with your second action. Yeah, that's the entire difference. We put Godly Spouse pretty low. It's the literal last card in D tier. I guess build happens more often as your second action. I don't know how many times you're gonna go to build rooms, though. Maybe marginally less than the amount of times you go to grow. Stupid card. Lazy Bones. Pretty good source of stables. But draft 10... I think this is frequently 3 stables because it's likely a game where no one needs grain seeds or a game where no one needs day labor. Ideally, it's a game where people want both and have bonus actions on those. And, I mean, there's probably the rare game where it's just 2 stables. On the other hand, at worst, it's 2 free stables. Farmland and build are always getting taken. And pretty early, usually. Trying to think of how far below stall right I'm putting it, and I don't think the answer is very much. I think it has to be pretty close to stall right. So stall right at the end of A, lazy bones near the top of B. Maybe that's a little underrated. Alright, stable hand we don't need to rate here. Dairy Crier. I'm a fan of Dairy Crier. If you're the only one with early capacity, you can give everyone 2 food and get a breeding pair of sheep and a cow for yourself. That's pretty darn good. Maybe it's at the end of the game and everyone has their sheep and you don't. That's also very good. And sometimes you're okay giving someone a breeding pair of sheep for whatever reason because you benefit more. I think the card is usable frequently enough for it to be a solid B tier card. And I think just in general, cards that help you farm late are totally fine in Draft 10 meta. Smuggler. Turning wood into grain or grain into stone. I have not seen this card be used very much. It's probably good in high wood games. But I think I'd rather have Ebonist pretty much every time. I don't see myself doing the grain to stone in this meta. There's enough stone help, usually. And enough ways to convert grain into things that are better than a stone. But yeah, I think that first conversion can be pretty useful in some games. So I don't think I've seen it played. That could just be because it's not really in the drafts that I've had. But I'm going to say this is a C- occupation. And it might be better. It might be better. Mud Wallower recently got a really nice quality of life improvement on BGA. It now is very actively tracking how much mud you have. It's a fine source of early breeding animals. I think it's hard to justify playing the card after stage 1, for example. Maybe you do. Overall, what I would expect from it is you would get to breed pigs by stage 2, maybe 3. So let's say 3. So it's 6 pigs that way, and then another pig for 1 more proc of the Wallower itself by the end of the game. So it's a really fine source of pigs. I do think I see people play it the right amount, because I think it is a solid B tier card. Yeah, the rankings within tiers, I have to say, are pretty rough right now, and I don't really plan on checking them. Very roughly, things are at the top, bottom, or middle, but I'm definitely not doing side-by-side comparisons anymore when I'm placing these into the tiers. Alright, the Roast Master is fun. It's not very good. It's not the best way to inject cows into the game. I want it to be good. I want this to be a B tier Ock, and it's just not. It is definitely not a B tier Ock. Honestly, I want to say it's like a D tier Ock in this format. I think if you're focusing on this interaction early on in the game, you're probably just losing. Yeah, it's really too bad that it's not called Burger Flipper. I love flipping the burgers. Such a good thematic name for the bottom feeding, too. Flip a food over to the other one. Alright, on to Stone Sculptor. I'm not sure how I feel about Stone Sculptor in this meta. Because part of me thinks it should be pretty good. There should be, on average, enough stone in the draft. I guess that's still good. The downside is that, am I really spending a stage 1 or 2 action playing the card? Am I always taking Reedstone? In my early games these days, I'm not. So the playability on Stone Sculptor, I think, is surprisingly worse than in Original. I don't really know how it would do in Draft 8. Probably better. I'm just going to put this in B tier. It's definitely going to have some great games where it's like 5 points and you still have enough stone to do everything. But I think it might be a little hard to play in this format. And yeah, all of that is in the context of, even though if it's hard to play, I'm still putting it B tier. Like, it's definitely a card with great upside. Okay. Pet Grower. I got to use this yesterday for the first time. It was surprisingly not bad. How often would I play it? Often enough on Big House? C minus? C minus. Sower gives you a read every time you build a major, and at any time you can take the read for yourself or trade it for a sow. I want to say this is good, but taking the time to play Sower, declaring you want to build majors, and then building the majors, the timing doesn't feel very synergistic to me. So while the overall output seems very good, I'm putting it in C tier. Food Merchant lets you buy veggies. It's not the world's best veggie source, but it is a veggie source if you're otherwise struggling. You do have to have a grain source for it to be a veggie source, so this is probably just worse than Seed Trader in a lot of games, maybe better than Seed Trader in other games. Maybe you have a ginormous food engine off of grain and can use this to buy your veggies for very relatively low cost at the end. Yeah, seems like it's rarely good, which puts it in D tier. Sower lets you sow after round 14. Oh, true. I didn't even think about that. But yeah, Sower is one of the cards that benefits you by allowing a stage 7 sow, effectively. Good call. And that is it. That is it. I must have gone through some of these pretty quick. These 4 are duplicates. and we weren't able to put Mummy's Boy in because the picture is missing. But there we are. 7 bands, 2 band watch lists, and the biggest tier is D. Many of which would be more frequently playable in Draft 8. I guess. C tier is a little small. But yeah, that's just because a lot of the things that I might think are in C are in D because of the arena format. And then we have the Forest Campaigner tier. Just put that there for consistency's sake. Yeah, I think that's it. We done. Boom. Until minors? Yeah, the one that's done already and posted to YouTube. Alright, cool. So thanks all for watching. I know many of you might have preferred a game, but I think there was definitely a desire in the community, Twitch and YouTube combined, to have the tier lists done. As I don't know if anyone else has done the Oct tier list. Because I think Haydeezz, who was gracious enough to compile all these pictures and stuff, like, made a couple tier lists, but I think it was also, like, possibly messing around to make sure it all worked. So yeah. I am off tomorrow, stream-wise, and I am planning to be back on Thursday with an Agricola game. Not anticipating any issues for Thursday. Friday might be late again by an hour or two. It is what it is. I hope to see you all then, or at a future stream. Thanks so much for watching. Do I think the number of bans decreases in Draft 8? No, I think all of these are still bans. Put link in chat. Yes. I'm also gonna, like, put this on YouTube literally tomorrow, and I'll have the link there. And I mean, Lumin's in the title. Yeah. Sorry if it's still awkward to find. Alright. So yeah, thanks everyone. See you next time. Bye.